So once again, it's Ladies' Day at Aintree, Jamie, and once again, we're miles away from Aintree.
Miles away from the action. Is it going to rain there tomorrow or not?
I'm not sure, possibly. It's rained all week.
Due some rain, which is obviously going to impact. I think watching the first day at Aintree wasn't as bad as a lot of us feared. A lot of the results made sense. There was still something for everyone in terms of whether you believe that the Cheltenham form, as in Might Bite, best horse in the race, just bounces out of Cheltenham and bounces away with the Betfair Bull, or you take the opposite view and think that Cheltenham puts horses through the mill, in which case you look at We Have a Dream, who won the equivalent of the Triumph at Aintree, that Grade 1, and you have to think that there was probably some benefit in him bypassing Cheltenham while the rest really went through the mill there. So again, with that sort of general hot topic that forever follows Aintree, it depends on the individual horse. It's not something you can easily ascertain beforehand, but it's still relevant and it still plays out in the main races for our Friday preview.
One pattern I did notice on the first day, and it'd be interesting to see it keep following it, was a severe lack of Mullins and Elliott with Punchestown on the mind, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely right in that their resources and their power players are by and large just waiting for Punchestown, because that's where the money matters towards the big Irish showdown in terms of the trainers' title, which went down to the last few races, didn't it, last year?
Yeah, it was silly.
Really, I mean, I'm really cynical when it comes to stuff like that, but I couldn't help but get involved and get carried away with that. So even though Elliott is about $500,000 in front now, that can still be eroded given the strength in depth that Mullins has, the amount of star players that he's got on the team, and the amount of money that's now available at Punchestown. Having said all that, it's probably significant and probably tells you about the horse itself that he wants to get Min off the ball with a big Grade 1 at a big festival meeting, and Min is the highlight of the Melling, highlight of the day in terms of star performer.
Quite possibly,
yeah. I think so. So we'll get to him when we get to the Melling. It is called the Melling, isn't it?
I think, the Melling, it's been... you can be forgiven having gone through all 40 Grand National.
But yeah, Min is the headline act, and we'll get on him in a second. But there are 4 Grade 1s at Aintree on Friday, 2 real Grade 1s, 3 fake news, fake Grade 1s, because there's just standard isn't there. And it's partly to do with that fact that you were saying that a lot of the power lies with the Elliott and Mullins team, and if they're not playing out in Liverpool, then it obviously reduces what it takes to win the race. And I think we see that with a few of the Grade 1s there. But we start with an impossible handicap hurdle, which is a Grade 3, but is a handicap first and foremost. And what price is it the favourite about?
Yeah, 9 to 1
9
the field.
to 1 the field.
How on earth do you play a race like this?
There's lots of different angles in. We've got lots of different profiles in here. A horse like Storm Home's really interesting. We saw Tizard String. They ran really well doing on the first day entry. Finian's Oscar. How he managed to win that race after a series of errors, significant errors as well. It tells you that the horse has got a big engine, but it also told us in conjunction with a few of the other runners on the day, the Colin Tizard String, much like last year, are really peaking at Aintree as much as they were at Cheltenham. Storm Home's an interesting one here in that he's had just a handful of races, he's a novice, he's won his last 2, but a race like this, Nick, surely it will be a shock to the system for a horse who's only been playing in novice company so far, not faced a handicap. So it's whatever floats your boat really. If you like the unexposed element, if you like the potential of a proven form, then Storm Home is one for you. Let's talk about another one who was in the sort of Storm Home boat a while ago, and that's Lockderg Spirit. Because he's an unexposed horse by and large, and he just found the Betfair hurdle for his first handicap a shock to the system. Finished only midfield there, but his 6th in the Martin Piper Cheltenham was really good considering his position. And if you think back to that race, what was unusual was that blow by blow was just able to dictate a steady pace. It's very rare you get steady paces in big field handicaps at Cheltenham, but that's what happened, and that puts an even better spin on Lockderg Spirit's performance for 6, because that race didn't really test his stamina at all, and he was really getting going towards the end. But for a selection, for a sort of speculative selection, I'm going for another horse who ran at Cheltenham who wasn't seen to best effect, but it's an unusual route in that this horse tackled the Ultima Handicap Chase Number 14 is called Eamon and Noik. Is that what we're going with?
I was dreading when you mentioned that one. Then I thought, oh no, I'm going to trust your judgment.
But 3 out in the Ultima, won by Kustar Sivler, who's coming up in our Grade 1 Novice Chase later on. Eamon and Noik, Eamon and Nock. I'll just say different variations and choose which one you want. Eamon was bang there 3 out. He tanked into the lead. He was still going strongly, and then he was overhauled in the finish and finished only 9th. It wasn't representative of his form. I think it was either stamina or the fact that he made his move quite so soon, but either way, he looked much more at home in that company, in that class, than his finishing position would suggest. So he's back over hurdles here and back in trip. The back in trip is obvious because that's exactly the way he's shaped in the Ultima. Back over hurdles is interesting because he's got a lower mark to work with, £5 lower than he ran off at Cheltenham, and I don't think it's anything to do with him being a worse hurdler. It's just the fact that his development and his improvement has coincided with a switch to fences. So Eamon and Nock, let's just call them Eamon, back in trip, lower handicap mark, shaped really well at Cheltenham, and Tom Scudamore's back on because he was ridden by a claiming rider that day. So it's an unusual horse for a race like this, but I just like the different angles and the different variables with him compared to the rest. And what sort of price is he right now?
16 to 1.
Yeah, 16 to 1. It just seems that price reflects the surface in terms of, well, he was in a chase last time, it was over 3 mile 1, and he finished 9th. That entitles him to be 16 to 1, but dig a little deeper into the detail of that performance, and really I think he should be more like a 10 to 1 shot. It's a really competitive race, but Eamon, we're going to go with that, aren't we? Because we daren't pronounce the last part of his name. Eamon, for me, in that first race, that's a sort of value play.
Yeah, and unlikely to stay 16 to 1 when the legions of This Morning fans weigh in. Eamon Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
Is he This Morning, or is he?
He certainly. They roll him out to appear on GMTV, GMB. Good Morning Britain.
Good Morning Britain.
They wheel him out probably once a month to sit there with the ladies and talk a bit.
Anyway, first Grade 1 action of the day, the top novices hurdle.
Yeah.
At first glance, it doesn't look the strongest of Grade 1s, this, but that being said, at the top of the market, we've one that's a real improver.
Yeah, that's Global Citizen. We've got a nap, a next best, and a long shot from me as part of the copy, which you can find on the website.
Yeah.
But my nap, let's cut to the chase, is Global Citizen. And there's a lot to do with that point you made, Nick, about what it takes to win these Grade 1s, given that Elliott, Noah Mullins are playing out. Because in a Grade 1 novice hurdle over 2 mile, you're thinking immediately of all the power that Mullins and Elliott have got. Get a bird. Even Sam Crow could easily, he'd win this half the track if he was let go. But they haven't turned up, and that means it's a very winnable novice hurdle. Now, Global Citizen is one of those horses who bypassed Cheltenham to wait for Aintree. With the performance he put up at Kempton in the Dovecote, in theory he'd have finished sort of 3rd or 4th in the Supreme if you take a direct line from what Global Citizen achieved at Kempton to what it took to get in the frame in this year's Supreme. So it just tells you of a standard in some context for Global Citizen. And there's nothing, Nick, in there who could have finished 3rd or 4th in a Supreme. Those who did tackle Cheltenham either finished down the field or in midfield, and a lot of the rest are still making their way up also gradually. So Global Citizen is in pole position as far as performance is concerned. In terms of what horses have achieved in ratings, he's ahead of the pack, in fact some way ahead of the pack. He hasn't gone through the rigours of Cheltenham, which is obviously another plus point with him, and there's that strong sense with him is that he is still getting better all the time. He cost a lot of money out of the point circuit. John Joe Neal trained him for the first 3 runs. Ben Pauling said, I think I'll have a go with that, and has won 2 from 2. Really impressive at Kempton. So this is one of those races where you start with a look at the betting. Global Citizen
9 to 4.
Yeah, he's 9 to 4, and the initial reaction is, well, it's a short price for a race like this. But the more you dig into different horses, and the more you discover or uncover the depth in the race, you think that actually might be a pretty fair price about Global Citizen, given that he's in pole position and he, as much as any, has got plenty of potential still.
Yeah, one I did think was interesting at the price. You'll be able to tell me with the race card in front of you. 16 to 1 Lalo. I'm almost certain he won the bumper here last year at a big price.
That's right. And we've been sort of in the departure lounge all season with him, in that we all remembered Aintree where he absolutely tanked through that bumper as well. and we all suspected there was a brilliant novice hurdler in there. It hasn't worked out for him as yet.
He's been well backed, I think, almost all his
Has he?
starts. Yeah, a couple of times.
So,
he's
I
let
mean,
down.
he made his handicap debut in the Betfair Hurdle. He was only 14-1 for that, and obviously it might sound like a big price, but in a race like that, it's not a big price at all. And it's a case of coming back to Aintree. It's a case of having Richard Johnson aboard for the first time. If this horse is stimulated back into where he was in bumpers, then he will certainly give Global Citizen a run for his money. And you get the impression with him that, like I said, there's a takeoff coming. It's just a matter of when, but this looks more likely than any for him. So we mentioned the ground, didn't we? It is still testing as far as we associate Aintree Festival ground, but it's not as testing as it has been in midwinter still. So yeah, he's an interesting one. Another interesting one, very briefly, is that when Global Citizen won at Kempton, it was his 5th start over hurdles. He was really professional, really sort of ready-made already. He was the finished product, more or less. In second was a horse having its first ever start over hurdles. That's Scarlet Dragon. Now, Scarlet Dragon finished 9 lengths behind Global Citizen, but there's no way he's going to finish 9 lengths behind him here, given what he learned that day, given how good he was on the flat as well. It's very rare to get horses who are rated 118 like he was on the flat to go hurdling. And from the position he was in, he was just there. He was there to win, but because he was so green, he ended up being there to learn. And that finishing surge he put in to get second was really promising. So there won't be 9 lengths between Scarlet Dragon and Global Citizen on Friday in this Grade 1. It's also a statement of faith that the 2 hurdle races the Scarlet Dragon's been asked to contest are a Grade 2 and now a Grade 1. So having said that, it's still a big ask for him. It's still more testing ground than he's used to on the flat, and you still get the impression it's all part of the learning process with him. So I'm still happy with Global Citizen, deserving to be probably 7-4 rather than 9-4. But Scarlet Dragon 1 and Layla 2 are other horses who could easily transform now that they've had their runs behind them and now that we're in the spring.
Now, it's difficult to argue against the Melling being the feature of the day, but in the Mildmay, looks a really good race, this. There's some really brilliant form lines, there's some really interesting profiles, different stories with each. Terrafort's a 7-2 favourite, and in here you've got a long shot fancy.
Got a long shot fancy, and obviously the Mildmay is plugged into the RSA chase. It's sort of the silver medal, I think, this for the Staying Novice Chase, is the gold medal being ascertained at Cheltenham. So we've naturally got a good few horses who ran in the RSA who are coming to the Mildmay. When you think of the RSA though, we've got Presenting Percy out on his own by the end. We've got Monolly, who was really good and really on point, out on his own in second. And then we've got the British contingent, and that really told us what we suspected, is that the Irish Staying Novices are a league or perhaps 2 leagues above the British contingent. It's just the state of affairs whereby when you see a horse like Black Corton's being able to run right through the season, that in itself is a bit of an indictment on the other British Staying Novices that we've got or we haven't really seen much of. So that's a sort of very basic interpretation of the form, but it's still relevant here because we've only got one Irish representative, and that's Snow Falcon. And Snow Falcon ran in the Flogas, which was at the Dublin Racing Festival, wasn't he? That brilliant Grade 1 that was won by Monolly, who was obviously second to Presenting Percy. Alboom Photo was in that race, who won a Grade 1 Fairy House.
Chin's Shattered Love.
Rathvinden was in that race, who won the National Hunt Chase. The Storyteller was in that race, who won the big handicap, one of the big handicaps at Cheltenham. So that was a really strong race in hindsight. And for Snow Falcon to be beaten less than 5 lengths, again, that the next best of the Irish novices could still be better than the best of the British novices. That's the sort of theory I'm working on. And it is a working theory, and it is just a theory. But when you look at the prices and see how far down the list Snow Falcon is, which is about, at this time,
11-1 at the moment.
Yeah, double figures about a horse who is linked in with those really good novices. I think that that's a big price because of the strength of his form, because also that he did his best work over hurdles at 3 miles, and he hasn't really tapped into that stamina as yet as a novice chaser. Now, he ran in the Irish Grand National just 11 or 12 days ago. Grueling race, if everyone remembers. It was like Wacky Races, wasn't it, at the end? And I like to watch that finish with the Benny Hill music playing underneath because so much happened. Obviously, that's a grueling race, but Snow Falcon didn't get that far. He only went halfway around before he unseated the 12th. Wasn't his fault because he was badly hampered by another horse. So I'm just thinking that the fact that he could finish 5th, close up 5th in that Flogas, I'm not sure that many of these British staying novices could even match that. And when you put that in conjunction with his price, I do like Snow Falcon in here, and that's why he's my long shot on the hit list of the Nap, the Long Shot, and the Next Best. So, just rounding up very briefly the British contingent, we got Elegant Escape and Black Corton, who were 3rd and 5th in the RSA. We've got Terrafor, who obviously ran really well behind Shattered Love. We've mentioned Shattered Love with that form tying in with Snow Falcon. He just never really struck me as an out-and-out stayer, Terrafor. He's looked as much about speed as stamina, and I'm a bit worried about him going up to 3 miles. So just for various reasons, the frailties of the British staying novices and the power of the Irish staying novices, this might be quite a simple case, and it might seem like a simple case, and in many ways it is. But my thinking and my theory is that the Next Best amongst the Irish contingent is probably as good, if not better, than the cream of the British stays this season. So that's why I'm just thinking that's a big price about Snow Falcon.
I'll quickly ask you about Kustar Sivola as well. Plenty will have backed him to win the Ultimate, but is this just a step too high up?
Well, it's a good point to make, and one that needs making is that I've referenced that the staying novices in Britain are no great shakes at all. Therefore, their standard isn't far ahead of the best handicaps that we've had. So when you look at the ratings, Kustar Sivola is only £5 behind Black Corton, and he's the one with a P. Kustar Sivola's the one with all the potential. He's the one with all the momentum as well, having won at Cheltenham. So it's another one, very much a case in point of preying on the fact that the graded staying novice chasers in Britain aren't a very high standard at all. That sends you towards either the handicap graduates like Kustar Sivola or the Irish next wave, second wave, the championship horses in Ireland, which is like Snow Falcon. So yeah, I think this is a good race to have a pop at, because I'm not sure Terrafor is a guaranteed stayer. I've got my doubts about the strength of the British staying novices generally, and that sends you towards 2 horses, Snow Falcon as the sole Irish representative and Kustar Sivola as the horse who hasn't got that big a gap to bridge in terms of top handicaps with Grade 1 novices.
Okay, into the Melling Chase, and we've already touched on this very slightly about Min being all about Min really, having just come close in the Champion Chase, being blown away really by Altior. Is it a case of do or die for him this time?
Yeah. I think Min's a lot like Mike Bite in that what Mike Bite did for second in the Gold Cup would have won him probably 7 out of 10 Gold Cups. Mm-hmm. What Min did for second in the Champion Chase likewise would have won him 7 out of 10, and it just tells you about the resolution of Native River and the brilliance of Altior, while we've got horses who are finishing second. Now obviously Min, if I was Willie Mullins, I'd sit Min down in front of the TV and say, watch Mike Bite, look at how he's come out of Cheltenham, look at how he stamped his class and his superiority over the rest of the field. That's what you need to do, and I think that he can and will do it. Now the only issue with Min is that, remember the one misstep he's made this year, which was on his second start when he was first past the post
with Simply Ned.
Ned, but then lost it. He had to scramble home that day, and part of the reason was that he just didn't have his race head on, and he was far too keen. He didn't jump as well as he can, he didn't travel like he can, he just wasn't in the right frame of mind that day. Since then, they've taught him to relax a little more, they've ridden him a little more patiently, but they've also fostered that instinct he's got to get on it, because to win a 2-mile chase at Cheltenham, like a Champion Chase, you've got to be really speedy, which is exactly what he shows. And now they're going to ask him to do something different, because this is 2.5 mile. Every instinct within him prior to Cheltenham being fostered into, come on, use your speed, let's take the speed out of Altior, let's go and make that bid. And now he's being asked to do something different. So that is the only worry, in conjunction with the fact that quick turnaround, or relatively speaking, between Cheltenham and Aintree. But the bottom line, isn't it? He's by far and away the best horse in this race, isn't he? I mean, Balco de Flo is honourable, he's admirable, but I'm pretty sure he was the only one in that Ryanair to really give his running. I'm not sure we saw the best of Anders all the others in that race, including Cloudy Dream, who's coming here. Is Cloudy Dream in this race?
Yes.
Yes, he is number 2. Including Cloudy Dream. Le Président won a handicap at the festival. Again, doesn't qualify him to go straight into a Mellinger Grade 1. Sizing Granite has got big question marks over him. So it's Mins to lose, isn't it? That's the bottom line with this race. It's Mins to lose. And he's about... What price is he?
13 to 8.
I was a bit surprised when you said he was 13 to 8 there. I was sort of expecting you to say even money or even 10 to 11. Actually, that's a good price about Min, isn't it? That's a good price about Min, considering the performance that he produced in the Champion Chase. So you're relying on him to be relaxed enough over this new trip, just a month on from Cheltenham, to show his best form. And therefore you're relying on Willie Mullins. And obviously recent history tells us that there's no better trainer of preparing horses than Willie Mullins. So yeah, it's Mins to lose. And I'm thinking that just when you mentioned that price there, 13 to 8, 6 to 4, that seems to underestimate the class that he's got relative to the rest.
Now, Altior missing is no new thing this season, and in his absence, Politolog has been sweeping up.
Yeah.
Is there an angle in the fact, well, there's no Altior, Politolog might be able to do it again, or is he bumping into one here in Min that should have too much class?
He's bumping into, well, a very literal reading that when Min was second to Altior in the Champion Chase, 16 lengths behind in the end was Politolog. So that tells you something of the relationship between those two. Now obviously Politolog and Paul Nicholls and Sam Twiston-Davis know that on a level playing field he's not going to have the beating of Min. We've seen that not once but a couple of times in the horse's career. So they're going to have to do something different, and that something different is probably going to be to try and pick him off late, because Politolog, he was always thought of as a 2.5 miler, and then it's this season that he's been reinvented as a 2 miler, but he's now going back up in trip, and I suspect he's going to be patiently ridden, and I suspect they're going to try and pounce late and try to outrun Min in the finish, because they know that they can't outsprint him, so they're going to try and outstay him. They've got a tongue strap on for the first time. It's all about tactics, and if Min does get worked up and does get headstrong, then obviously Politolog comes into a little bit. But it's hard for me, Nick, to look at Cheltenham, look at that 16 length discrepancy between the pair of them, and not think that Politolog has got a mountain to climb if he's to reverse that form.
Okay, on to the Topham Chase then, and second race of the week over the national fences, which is an interesting angle really, because how would you approach it? Would you approach this as a normal handicap, or would you look for one that has run well over the fences in the past?
A good point to make, because these fences and this course is so unique that you naturally are inclined to dig out the horses who've been there and done that. Happens with the national a lot, happens with the Topham certainly, but it also happens with the one race we've had over the national fences, the Fox Hunter, and Ballinasloe was runner-up last year and went one better this year. So again, that experience of Aintree does count for a lot. So with that in mind, yes, I think your first port of call is to see the horses who ran over national fences before, and this race last year, because there are several horses who contested this race who are coming back. 007 was 4th last year. He's amongst the market leaders again this time around. Who else have we got? Well, we've got a horse who I do like, and that's Bouvrel, who was only 10th in this last year. And you think, well, if he was 10th, how on earth is he going to finish second? But he was hampered not once but twice last year, Bouvrel, in this race, and it really does fit in with the theme of being unlucky. And he's a really unlucky horse. I know the people at Timeform aren't supposed to think of horses in lucky or unlucky terms, but whatever ladder this horse walked under, it's been following him around almost all his life. He's finished placed at 3 Cheltenham festivals without managing to win. This Cheltenham festival, he was brought down at the second fence in the Grand Annual. Earlier this season, he was in races which didn't play to his strengths. And again, we're back to the point that in this race last year, he finished 10th but was hampered twice. So the upshot of that is that he finds himself this year off a lower mark than last year. I'm convinced that all his powers are intact. I'm convinced that we saw enough of him last year in this race to think that he did take well to the fences. And I'm convinced that his luck is going to turn sooner rather than later. So in a really competitive race, for partly the reason that you mentioned, that a horse has got its eye in over the national fences, and the other element of handicapping is well, who's the best handicapped horse according to the form? Bouvrel is amongst them, certainly, because he's dropped in the weight. So he's a really frustrating horse for anyone who's followed him. There are plenty of people, Bouvrel supporters, who will have given up a long time ago and saved their money, and rightly so. But I'm just saying it might be a good opportunity to jump back aboard the Bouvrel bandwagon, because there's loads in his favour here if he gets the rub of the green.
Bouvrel there then, and into the Sefton now, the last grade one of the day actually, and well, Nicky Henderson's got a monopoly here. The first three in the top of the market, and all three as well involved in the Albert Bartlett. Santini was third, is the 2-1 favourite. Ochre Coral, who was actually second, is 3-1 second favourite, and then Schetters Oboe was pulled up, his 10th.
And did those all run in the Albert Bartlett, didn't they?
Yes.
So the Albert Bartlett is obviously the key linking race between Cheltenham and the Sefton, because of the 3 mile novice hurdle. Now, Kilbrickan Storm beat OK Corral was second, who's here. Santini was third, who's here. Tower Bridge was fifth, who's here. Poetic Rhythm was 10th, and Chef des Oboe was pulled up, having lost a shoe. So we've got that collection of horses who are cornering the market. But one thing history tells us is that this, perhaps more than any other race, is where the Cheltenham factor kicks in, because it's such a gruelling test for the young horses, the Albert Bartlett, that many of them leave the races behind. Many of them leave everything on the field at Cheltenham and aren't able to reproduce that form when it comes to the Sefton. And if you do take that in mind and do take that into account, then obviously you're getting some very big prices about the horses who didn't contest those races. Let me just very briefly, before we get into the other ones, the non-Cheltenham horses. Poetic Rhythm performed the worst out of those that completed, but he was only 10-1 that day, and in the Challow Hurdle he did beat Kilbrickan Storm, who ended up winning the Albert Bartlett. And I think that they might have learned the lesson from last time, when he was in the teeth of the race far sooner than the other principals, Poetic Rhythm, and I think that it ran the petrol gauge down very quickly, and I'd be willing to sort of be more forgivable with him, given how his form worked out through Kilbrickan Storm, and given that he was asked a lot with the ride in the Albert Bartlett. So his price is quite appealing, given what he'd done before Cheltenham. But out of those who didn't contest Cheltenham, we've got Sam's Gunner, who was really interesting here, in that he ran on Imperial Cup Day. It was that final at Sandown. It was 2.5 miles. He won it through stamina. He looked like a real strong stayer. That's what helped him win at Sandown, and that's what suggests he's going to be in his element with 3 miles. So Sam's Gunner's interesting because he is an up-and-comer. He's going to be suited by the trip. And if you think, like me, that a good way into this race is just to take on all of those horses who had the good slugged out with them at Cheltenham, then Sam's Gunner makes some appeal here.
Okay, Sam's Gunner there. Would you go each way at 20-1?
Yeah. Each way is a good play, I think, because I think it's very unlikely the 3 of the Cheltenham principals will give the running, because it is such a hard race and it is such a big ask for them, and they will be thinking of the future. I mean, this is a bit of an afterthought after Cheltenham, but with an afterthought comes a forethought, and they'll be ridden. If they feel that the horse has nothing underneath them, they won't be asked to do too hard a race, because they've got the future to think of. So Sam's Gunner each way 20-1. He's not a million miles off them in terms of form. He missed Cheltenham, which is an advantage, especially in this race, and he looks like a strong stayer.
One to go then, the bumper at the end of the card, which I was looking back on previous winners in recent years, has produced some really good ones.
Who else have we got?
So we've got the new one in 2012, Barters Hill in 15, and Bacardi's a couple of years ago in 2016. And at the top of the market here, we've got one with a large P on it.
Don't see many large P's in bumpers. A large P means open to considerable improvement. Small P, we're expecting them to improve about £7. With a large P, it's more like a stone. So it's unusual for a horse to have a large P, but it was unusual for Paul Nicholls to have a horse who was 13-8 on his debut in a bumper, which is what Danny Cowan was at Kempton, I think. I think it was Kempton. Yeah, it was Kempton. So this horse clearly had a reputation beforehand, and he did deliver in full on the day, and it was a bit of a... it would knock your breath a little bit, saying, well, I wasn't expecting the horse to be quite so short, but I can see totally the reasons why when he came through and he beat Pim so decisively that day. So that's the reason why he's a relatively short price favourite, 2-1. The negative is that we had a horse who won the last race on Thursday, Aintree, who was about the same price, 15-8, who obviously had brilliant form linked in with the Cheltenham bumper itself, the champion bumper. And we've got a similar priced horse who hasn't had the same background, the same level of form. So Danny Kerwin is a really promising horse, but at 2-1, or his price thereabout, I couldn't back him, Nick, at that price, given that, you know, it's a bumper. We've got loads of unknown quantities in there because they are young developing horses.
Yeah, and I mean, myself, I'm a bit of a bumper nerd. I've seen a few before.
Oh, was that 7 goal, is he?
Another time. Yeah. He swung round in the champion bumper.
He gets excited.
Up. Said he's going to do well here, but one of the best named horses in training, Harambe. I think he won well on debut.
Harambe,
yeah, 22-1. The name lives on. And
I like it. And he's just one of several once race bumper horses, like Mr. Fisher, like Seraverano.
Yeah.
So it just puts Danny Kerwin's price into perspective in that he's a once race bumper winner who was impressive. But we've got 5 or 6 of those in here, and it doesn't entitle Danny Kerwin to be a short price favourite. We've got the champion bumper form represented through Mercy Me, who was only 8th in the champion bumper, but that probably won't be far away from the standard required here. I do think though, and because if you look at Danny Kerwin and see such a short price, I don't think that Pim should be as big a price as he is. So Danny Kerwin's about 2-1. What price is Pim? 9s. So Pim was second to Danny Kerwin at Kempton, but that was Pim's first start for 10 months after he'd won a bumper at Ayr. And the point with Pim is that he's got a really stout pedigree. It's one that screams stamina, and it's one that suggests he's done really well to compile the record he has in 2 bumpers so far, and he's a really promising horse. It's only been good ground for him at Ayr and at Kempton, and now he's going to get softer ground. It should bring his stamina into play, and there are reasons for thinking he will get close to Danny Kerwin anyway because it was his first run of the year, but also more the fact that it's going to bring his stamina more into play. So there's only £4 between them on Timeform ratings. Danny Kerwin has got the large P, which obviously tells you everything about that. But the whole point with this is that if Danny Kerwin deserves to be 2-1, then surely Pim, who wasn't far behind him, who you expect to come on for the run, and who you expect to be in his element with the extra stamina test, shouldn't be as big as 9-1. And obviously he's trained by Nicky Henderson, carries the colours of Altior, and will be really primed for this. So with a few of these races today that we've talked about, it's a lot in the context of the market. In the context of Danny Kerwin's position, Pim looks a big price at 9.
Okay, yeah. At this time yesterday, I asked Ben who did his Grand National thoughts, but I'm not going to do that for you because
there's an hour and 45 minutes worth of footage of me and Phil waffling about the Grand National in various guises and ways and means.
Excellent.
So if you want the shortened version, that's available.
Yeah, they're both on the microsite, on YouTube, on Facebook, they're everywhere.
If you're not doing anything tonight and want to spend 2 hours looking at 2 old men talking about the Grand National runners, then choose the longer version. But there are 2 versions available for you. And tomorrow, if you do one thing, make sure you back Bouvrel in the Topham, because this horse's look is going to change. I know that we shouldn't say this, but I've got a really good feeling about Bouvrel. We don't deal in feelings or emotions here at Timeform. We're all robots who work for Skynet. But I've just got a feeling that Bouvrel is going to have his day at last in the Topham.
Smashing, we'll leave it at that.